10 problems that turn up on pontoon boats, what each one actually costs to put right, and which of them you can catch standing in a gravel parking lot before a dollar changes hands. That's the whole deal, and I'm not holding the good ones back for the end. Start with the sound. If you put your ear flat against an aluminum tube after somebody rolls the trailer forward a few feet and stops hard, you either hear nothing, which is what you want, or you hear a slow, heavy slop, like a half-full jug in the back of a truck. That sound means water is living inside a sealed chamber that was welded shut at the factory, and it means the boat you are about to buy is quietly heavier on one side than the other. I have spent more Octobers than I care to add up pulling carpet and plywood off these things, and that trick, trailer, ear, listen, has told me more in 10 seconds than an hour of walking the deck ever did. Here is the thing about pontoon boats that nobody says out loud at the boat show. Almost every dollar of the price is above the deck, and almost every problem is below it. The lounges, the speakers, the LED strip under the rail, the vinyl that looks like teak and isn't. That is what you're shown. That is what the salesperson opens with, and none of it is holding you up. 2 or 3 welded aluminum cylinders are holding you up. That's it. That's the boat. So we're going to go under the deck and work our way up. Stay with me to number 4, because the sheet of plywood you are standing on can be the wrong sheet of plywood, and the wrong one will corrode the aluminum it's bolted to from the day it's fitted. Number 6 is the safety item, and it isn't hypothetical. The Coast Guard put out a formal alert about pontoon-style boats going bow down, and their own language on the cause is blunter than anything I dare write. And at number 8, I'll tell you why some pontoon seats develop pink blotches that no cleaner on earth will remove, and what's actually living in the foam. Let's get into it. First, the physics, because it explains every failure that follows. A regular boat has a hull, a shaped shell that both floats and cuts water. A pontoon has neither. It's a flat deck bolted across the top of sealed tubes, and it floats purely on displacement. Push the tubes down into the water, they shove water aside, and the weight of that shoved aside water is exactly what holds your family up. There is no clever shape doing the work. It's volume, and volume alone. That has 2 consequences you'll feel every time you use the boat. 1, it is astonishingly stable at rest, which is why 15 people can stand on one edge and nothing dramatic happens. 2, everything about it depends on those tubes staying full of air and staying attached. A crack the width of a hair in a weld doesn't sink you today. It changes your boat by a few pounds a week for 3 seasons, and one afternoon, you notice she sits funny at the dock. Keep that running theme in your head as we go. Money above the deck, consequences below it. Number 1, water inside the tubes. This is the only failure on the list that can actually sink a pontoon boat, and it's also the one most likely to be sitting in front of you right now on a used boat with a clean interior and a fresh coat of wax. Tubes don't usually fail in the middle of a smooth panel. They fail at the joints. The most common leak point I've seen, and the one experienced builders point to first, is the weld where the tube attaches to its mounting bracket, the crossmember saddle. You often cannot see it without a telescoping mirror and a good light, especially on the inboard side, because the bracket itself is in the way. The second big source is beaching. Everybody beaches a pontoon. It's half the appeal. You nose up onto a sandbar, drop a ladder, spend the afternoon. Do it on gravel 100 times or once on rock at speed. and you thin the metal or open a seam right along the bottom of the leading section. The third source is simple pinhole corrosion over many years, which we'll come back to. The good news is that most modern tubes are chambered. Bulkheads divide the inside into sealed sections, so water entering the front chamber stays in the front chamber and you can drive home instead of swim home. Some builders pressure test each tube on the line with an air fitting before it ever leaves the plant, and clean, consistent welds are a decent visual proxy for a shop that cares. When you're shopping, ask directly whether the tubes are chambered and whether they're pressure tested. A salesperson who knows the answer immediately is telling you something. So is one who doesn't. Now, the repair. This is where people get hurt financially. The correct fix is to drain the chamber, find the leak with low-pressure air and soapy water, and weld it. Aluminum welding on a thin marine tube is real work, and the boat has to come out of the water and usually off the trailer. I've seen it done with epoxy, with screws and rubber washers, with rivets, with caulk, with the spray can miracle products. Those are all delaying tactics on a moving boat that flexes every time it crosses a wake. And I'll be honest about the limit of my own opinion here. Builders genuinely disagree about whether you should ever cut a drain plug into a tube. Some shops fit them routinely. Others say putting a deliberate hole below the waterline is trading a small problem for a bigger one. And I lean that way. But I've never built tubes for a living, and the people who have don't all agree with me. Test it before you buy. Trailer, forward, hard stop, ear on each tube. Then walk the dockside and look at how she sits. A list of 2 or 3 inches with nobody aboard and the fuel tank not obviously to one side is a conversation you need to have. Number 2, and this one's quick. Oxidation and growth. Aluminum in water oxidizes. That's not a defect, that's chemistry. And the dull gray chalky look on an older boat's tubes is completely normal. Where it matters is speed and money. A boat that lives in a slip all season grows a beard, algae, scum, and in a lot of the country, zebra mussels. And that fuzz on the tubes costs you real miles per hour and real fuel. A shop I've priced against charges roughly $500 for a high-pressure acid wash and brightener on a 2-tube boat and north of $700 on a tri-tune. And that's an annual line item if you keep her in the water. On a lift or a trailer, it's a fraction of that. Worth remembering when the marina quotes you slip fees. Number 3, underpowered. Here's the trap. A 24-foot pontoon with a 60-horse motor on the back is cheap, and it looks identical in photographs to the same boat with 150. Loaded with people and a cooler, that small motor will push you along at somewhere in the teens and never really get up and go. You will not pull a tube properly. You'll run the engine at wide open throttle for hours to do what a bigger motor does at half effort, which is exactly how you wear one out. Rough guide. For a mid-sized family pontoon, you want to be looking at 90 to 115 at absolute minimum, and on the bigger boats, 150 and up. The cruel part is the arithmetic of upgrading. Stepping up at order time is often a few hundred to a couple of $1,000s. Repowering later, once you've discovered you hate it, is a whole new outboard plus rigging plus labor, and you'll eat the difference twice. Number 4, the deck. And this is the one I flagged. Under that carpet or vinyl is plywood. 3/4 inch, bolted and screwed to aluminum crossmembers. Every seat base, every rail post, every ladder bracket has fasteners driven through it. And each fastener is a path for water into the end grain. Now, the detail I want you to have. The marine plywood the pontoon industry uses is typically CCA treated, a chromated copper arsenate treatment that plays acceptably with aluminum. The pressure-treated plywood you can buy at a home center today is a different animal. After the residential phase-out of CCA, the common retail treatments went to copper-heavy chemistries, and copper against aluminum in a wet environment is a corrosion cell. People rebuild their own decks with the green stuff from the lumber aisle every single year, and they are, slowly, eating the tubes and crossmembers they just bolted it to. That's the failure nobody warns you about, and it's a failure caused by doing what looks like the responsible thing, what it costs. Marine deck sheets run somewhere around $100 each, and a mid-sized boat takes a stack of them, so the material isn't the problem. The labor is. To replace a deck, you strip the entire boat. Every seat, every panel, the fence rails, the console, the wiring loom running under the deck, the fuel fill, the ladder. Then you unbolt everything, lift the old deck, deal with the fasteners that snapped, and reassemble. That's a shop job measured in days, not hours, and it's why a soft deck on an otherwise pretty 15-year-old boat can quietly total it. Test it with your feet. Out of your shoes if you can get away with it. Walk the perimeter. Walk the corners. Walk hard right at the base of every seat and every gate. Sponginess, a slight give, a groan. That's rot. Look at the edge of the deck where it meets the trim for staining or delaminating layers. And if the carpet is brand new on a 15-year-old boat, ask yourself what it's covering. 2 things to notice before we go on. The failures so far all happened out of sight, and every one of them was cheap to prevent and expensive to fix. That pattern doesn't break. It gets worse from here, because the next few aren't about the boat's condition at all. They're about what the boat physically can and cannot do, which no amount of maintenance will change. And I still owe you number 6, and the reason those pink stains won't come out. Number 5, wind. A pontoon is a barn door with a floor, tall flat sides, a bimini top acting as a sail, and almost no draft to grip the water. In any kind of breeze, the boat goes where the wind wants, and the rudder effect of a single outboard is a suggestion. New owners discover this at the dock, in front of an audience, usually on a Saturday. It is genuinely a skill problem and not a defect, and it does get easier. The technique that helps most: plan the approach so the wind pushes you onto the dock rather than off it. Come in slower than feels right, and get a line on early rather than trying to steer your way out of it. If you're moving from a deep V boat, you'll spend a season relearning this. Budget for a scuffed rub rail. Number 6, stuffing the bow. This is the serious one. Pontoons don't cut waves, they ride over them, and when the bow gets pushed down, by a wake, by coming off plane suddenly, by 6 people standing at the front rail, the flat foredeck can dig in and take green water over the top. Most of the time, that's a soaked cooler and some yelling. Occasionally, it isn't. In 2025, the Coast Guard issued a safety alert covering a jet-driven pontoon-style vessel after multiple capsizings, some of them fatal. The manufacturer had already been under a recall, and the remedy included sealing off part of the hull so ballast water couldn't run forward, extra warning labels, and an addendum to the operator's guide. What sticks with me is the Coast Guard's own framing. They said, "Weather and poor seamanship did not appear to be significant contributing factors." That is an unusually direct thing for a federal agency to write down. That specific case is one design, and I want to be careful not to smear an entire category with it, but the underlying physics belongs to every pontoon on the water, Keep the weight bias slightly aft. Cross wakes at an angle rather than square on. Do not chop the throttle just before a wake, because dropping off plane drops the bow at exactly the wrong moment. Ease it, don't kill it. And if the bow starts going down, reduce power and get people to the back, because thrust with a buried nose only drives it deeper. Number 7, and it's short, but I'd rather you had it than not. Carbon monoxide collects in pockets around the back of a boat and on a pontoon in the space between the tubes under the rear deck. It is odorless, and the early symptoms, headache, nausea, dizziness, look exactly like too much sun and not enough water. Nationally, hundreds of boating-related CO poisonings and over 100 deaths were tallied in one commonly cited 15-year count, and several states have written specific rules about hanging off the swim platform with the motor running. The rule at my end is simple and non-negotiable. Engine running, nobody in the water behind the transom, and nobody sitting on the swim deck. Not for a minute. That's the halfway mark. And if this is the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe. The rest of the list is the money and the fine print. And that's where most buyers actually get hurt. Starting with the seats, which is where I promised you the pink. Number 8. Furniture. Pontoon upholstery lives outdoors, gets rained on, gets sat on in wet swimsuits, and gets covered while damp. 2 things follow. The foam inside absorbs water and stays wet long after the surface dries, and the seat bases, usually plywood boxes screwed to the deck, become the entry point for water into the deck itself. Half the rotten decks I've pulled were rotten in a ring around the seat bases first. Then there's the pink. You'll see it on older white and cream vinyl. Blotchy rose-colored patches, sometimes only visible from the inside at first, that no cleaner touches. That is not a stain in the ordinary sense, and it is not sunscreen. It's a dye produced by bacteria living between the foam and the underside of the vinyl. The organism most often named is Streptoverticillium reticulum, though the industry literature is clear that it isn't the only culprit, and I'd treat any confident single-cause claim with a raised eyebrow. The dye migrates up through the vinyl from below, which is why surface cleaning does nothing. You're scrubbing the outside of a window somebody painted on the inside. There are products sold to reduce it, and there's a testing standard, ASTM E11428, that certified marine vinyls have passed for pink stain resistance. Prevention is dryness. Wipe down after use, don't store wet towels on the cushions, and get airflow under the cover. Once it's there, be skeptical of anyone promising a full removal. Number 9. The capacity plate and what it doesn't mean. Federal rules under 33 CFR Part 183 require a capacity plate on motor-powered monohull boats under 20 feet. Those numbers come out of a defined formula. For outboard boats, a baseline of length times width divided by 15, with manufacturers assuming roughly 150 pounds per person. Now read that again and notice 2 words: monohull and under 20 feet. A 24-foot tri-toon is neither. The number of people on that plate was not produced by a Coast Guard formula. It was produced by the manufacturer's own engineering to their own standard. And while the reputable builders do it properly and conservatively, nobody outside the company checked their arithmetic. Meanwhile, the 150-pound average person is a figure that has aged about as well as you'd expect. I am not telling you the plate is fiction. I'm telling you it's a manufacturer's opinion presented in the visual language of a legal limit, and that the difference matters when you've got 11 adults, a full fuel tank, 4 coolers, and a dog. The practical rule a lot of experienced owners use is to knock 20% off the printed weight figure and treat that as the real ceiling, and know that exceeding the plate can void your insurance coverage in an incident, which is a very quiet way for a bad day to become a catastrophic one. Number 10. Corrosion where different metals meet. Aluminum protects itself with a tight oxide skin, and left alone, it does fine. Bolt a stainless steel fitting to it in water, and you've built a battery. The aluminum is the anode, it gives up material, and the stainless is protected. The bigger the stainless surface relative to the aluminum contact patch, the faster it goes. Salt water massively accelerates it, but any impure water conducts well enough to keep the process ticking over. And stored boats still corrode at metal junctions because humid air is enough electrolyte to keep it alive. Builders who take it seriously isolate the hardware. Nylon washers, isolating tape, barrier coatings on the mating faces, sacrificial anodes on the outdrive and hull. On a used boat, get down and look at gate hinges, rail post bases, ladder mounts, and the transom bracket. White powdery bloom and pitting around a stainless fastener is the tell. I'll flag my own limits here. I'm a freshwater guy by habit. If you're buying to run in salt or brackish water, the isolation details and the anode schedule matter far more than anything I do on a lake, and you want a surveyor who works that coast rather than my general advice. Number 11. The money after the money. Depreciation first, and the published numbers genuinely conflict. Some sources put the first year hit at 10 to 15%. Others say 20 to 30 for pontoons specifically. I'll take the conservative end and tell you to plan on losing at least a tenth of the purchase price the moment it's a used boat, with the honest possibility of triple that. Over 5 years, a quarter to 40% gone is the broad consensus, and pontoons depreciate faster than most leisure boats because there are a lot of them and they're bought by families who trade up. Then the running costs. Engine servicing, oil and plugs, a water pump impeller service on the outboard, which shops schedule every 3 years or 100 hours. And which typically lands around $400 plus parts. Winterization, which depending on horsepower and shop is a couple of hundred to over 500. Storage, which is the single biggest variable in the whole equation. Indoor winter storage runs a few hundred a season, and a wet slip in a desirable spot can dwarf everything else on this list combined. Insurance, registration, trailer bearings, tires. None of that is a scandal. It's the cost of the thing. It's just not on the sticker. Right. That's the list. Now the part I actually want you to remember, because it isn't about aluminum at all. You're going to be shown a warranty document, and the word on the front of it will be lifetime. Let's take one real published example. A major pontoon manufacturer's own warranty PDF, limited lifetime structural coverage on the tubes, gates, channels, motor mounts, and railings. Sounds enormous. Read further. The lifetime structural warranty and the wood component warranty are transferable within 10 years of the original purchase date, and once transferred, coverage extends to a maximum of 10 years from that original date. So the lifetime, for you as the second owner, is the remainder of a decade that started when a stranger signed the paperwork. By at year 9, you get 12 months. By at year 11, you get nothing. And the word on the brochure never changed. Read further still. The wood deck coverage. The plywood, the single most expensive thing on this boat to replace, goes to the original retail purchaser only, not transferable at all in that document. The one component whose failure can write off a used pontoon is the one component the used buyer has no claim on. And then the exclusions. Damage from failure to trim the boat properly. Damage from submersion, with the document specifically acknowledging that water can advance over the front bow deck of a pontoon boat and cause damage. Electrolysis. Cosmetic damage from saltwater corrosion, normal fading of fabrics and carpet. Look at what that list is. It's this video. It's numbers 6, 10, 2, and 8. The 4 things a pontoon boat does by its nature, written out in advance, and excluded. Somebody in that building knew exactly what these boats do, described it accurately, and put it on the side of the page marked "Not Covered." I want to be precise about the accusation, because it isn't fraud, and I'm not claiming it is. Every one of those clauses is legal, disclosed, and probably defensible. That's the point. Nobody lied to you. A word with no legal definition, lifetime, was placed on the outside of a document that spends its interior explaining that it doesn't mean lifetime, doesn't mean yours, and doesn't cover the failures the product is known for. The lie isn't in any sentence. It's in which sentence they printed large. So take the word off the table. When a salesperson says lifetime, the only reply that matters is lifetime of what, whose, transferable to whom, for how long. And can I read the exclusions page right now? If the document isn't on the desk in 2 minutes, you've learned what you needed to. Here's what I keep coming back to on boats like this. A pontoon is one of the most honest machines you can own. It floats because a cylinder displaces water. It goes because a propeller pushes it. There's no black box, no dealer-only diagnostic, no subscription. A reasonably handy person with a socket set can understand the entire vessel in an afternoon, and that's rarer every year, which means the only real obstacle between you and knowing exactly what you're buying is whether anyone bothered to explain it. Nobody makes money teaching you to put your ear on a tube. There's no revenue in a buyer who walks the deck barefoot looking for soft spots. That knowledge isn't hidden. It's just unprofitable to hand out, so it doesn't get handed out, and the gap where it should be gets filled with cushion colors and speaker counts. Understanding a machine is a small kind of independence, not a dramatic one, just the everyday version where you're the calmest person in the conversation because you already know what the answer should sound like. So, the checklist. Run it in this order. Trailer test first, before the walk-around. Roll forward, stop hard, ear against each tube, front, middle, and rear. Silence is what you want. Then, get low. Inspect the weld where each tube meets its mounting brackets, inboard side included, with a light and a mirror. Look for cracks, previous repairs, epoxy, screws, sealant. Any of those means the boat has already told somebody it leaks. Then take your shoes off and walk the deck. Perimeter, corners, and hard at the base of every seat, gate, and rail post. Any give it all. Walk away or price a full redeck. Then look at the fasteners, rail bases, hinges, ladder, transom bracket. White bloom and pitting around stainless hardware is a corrosion cell in progress. Then the plate and the arithmetic. Take the printed weight capacity, subtract 20%, and add up your actual people, fuel, cooler, and gear against that number. If your normal Saturday exceeds it, you're looking at the wrong size boat. Then the paperwork. And here's the procedure rather than a rule of thumb. Ask for the warranty document, not the summary. Find 3 things: the transfer clause and its deadline, whether wood and deck components transfer at all, and the exclusions list. Then compare the exclusions to this list of problems. If the boat's characteristic failures are all excluded and the transfer window has closed, the warranty is worth 0, and the price should reflect a boat with no warranty. That's not a reason to walk. It's a number you now get to argue with, and engine hours plus service records. If nobody can tell you when the impeller was last done, assume it hasn't been and put $400 in your column. Do all that, and here's what you get: the bill that never shows up. No 4-figure call in year 3 about a tube weld you could have found in the parking lot. No redeck quote in year 5 that costs more than the boat's worth. Just a machine that does the thing you bought it for. Now, I want the confessions, not the success stories, the other ones. What did you buy that you regret? What did it cost you? And what was the exact moment you realized? The soft deck under the carpet, the motor that was 2 sizes too small, the warranty that expired on a date somebody else chose. Put it in the comments with the number, because a specific dollar figure from a real owner is worth more to the next person reading than anything I can tell them. And if you're somewhere with hard water, zebra mussels, salt, or a lake that freezes solid, say where. The same boat lives a completely different life in different water, and I want to see the spread. I do read them. Everyone, usually late, usually with the tab open longer than I intended. Subscribe if you'd like more of this sort of thing, because there's a thread here I deliberately didn't pull. There's a version of the tube question involving foam-filled versus hollow chambers that I've had 2 experienced builders give me flatly opposite answers on, and I haven't got to the bottom of it yet. When I do, you'll hear about it. Until then, put your ear on the tube. It costs nothing, and it tells you everything.